So we're back with video game love. We're with I can't say your name. It'd just be a nickname.
Joss.
You're gonna go by okay, all right, Joss. So essentially, what we do on here is we just talk about people that either play video games or know of them, and you're very accessible. So I just I picked you. So just to start off, do you still play video games?
No, I haven't played anything in, I feel like it's been 10 years.
10 years?
Yeah.
So you don't play very often then? Is that
Not
the follow-up
anymore.
question? That's the follow-up question. How often do you play? You don't play at all?
Not anymore. I would love to. I just don't.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have time. I'm always doing something.
Mm-hmm. So then what do video games mean to you in any confine, I guess, in today's time?
I think in some way video games, they teach us about the world from students that I've talked to or whatnot. For example, there was this one, I forget the story, but there was this one man, and he was talking to this kid, and he, oh no, there was this, I think he was somewhere like in Iran, and there was this kid who, from a video game, he's like, oh, I've seen that in a video game. I know where you're going. Oh, if you want to know where this place is, just go down this street, blah, blah, blah. And so in some way, they're so accurate, video games. And yeah, they show us, they teach us about what goes on in the world, whether it's a violent video game or it's action-based. And in some way, I think people are able to make up their own minds. I also think video games glamorize war, right? There's just something so sexy about going off and doing this for a heroic factor. And I think when you actually think about it, right? Video games, they don't necessarily always show the consequences. If you're thinking about Grand Theft Auto or something, right, you can kill countless people, but you don't get to see, say, the family of said person that you murdered, you know? Some video games are, like I said, ever realistic, and they do show trauma, or you get to follow somebody through their journey of avenging somebody's death because they haven't quite dealt with it, the loss. You see more representation for different identities.
Okay.
So it's that's, I feel like video games are in that sense more profound, based on how they've evolved over the years.
So they mean all of that to you?
Yeah.
Like personally?
Yeah.
Okay. And then the next one is why did you ever, like, were you ever in love with them? And if you did you fall out of love with them?
I can't say I was ever really the biggest fan of anything. Video games, music, whatever. I don't think I ever have been a diehard fan of anything. But yeah, I gotta say that I did enjoy playing video games that were catered to my interests, and I would spend hours playing them, and and as I've grown, I've realized that okay, you can play hours playing video games, and the time, time flies, but also time flies in doing all the other things that I'm doing. So if I had the time to actually just sit down and play something for that long, and see the passage of the day, I would really enjoy that. But I don't see the point of starting a game now and then picking it up like 3 months, a year later, because so much happens in between. So I feel like if I want to play a game, I want to enjoy it in the present and know that I'll have time to continue playing it later in the week or the next week or something.
So you noted that you did play them before. So why'd you stop?
Yeah, well, I'm busy. I have so many things that I'm doing. We're in a recession. So constantly putting myself out there. Nothing personal to video games or anything like that. It's just I never allow myself to because video games are the medium that I work in is film and entertainment. So video games and entertainment, they're very much the same thing. They're meant to suspend your attention. They suspend time, as I mentioned. And they allow you to immerse yourself in this world. And, so I already do that in the work that I do and, play with movie magic. But doing that for a video game, I feel like I don't have the time to play both fields. If that makes sense.
So then why didn't you go back to them? Like when you, I guess to be more specific, after you, let's say you had a little bit of time, you saw a poster, why didn't you say maybe I'll spend time doing this? Or maybe you have a friend that's like, hey, you should come over and play this or something. Why didn't you ever go out and do that?
I never felt a sense of urgency. I never felt that I needed it in my life. I need food or anything else. Because I knew that if a game were to say come out, I knew that it would always be there if I wanted to play it. I could always buy it at any time. I know that there are some games out there that, limited time offers or whatnot, but I'm very realistic with myself in the sense that I know that if I'm not going to give it the time that it deserves, that game may as well go to somebody that would actually use it.
That's very interesting. No, the reason I say that is because a lot of games now, there's not a lot of preservation. And you're all about the industry, like the film and media, you're in the media. And there's obviously a talk about preservation there too, because there are some movies that are lost in time, and then maybe there are bits and pieces that are lost from a piece of film. And because you did note that the games will be there when I get to them, if they get to them. Some aren't there anymore. Right. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say that. Some are there, but there's no legal way to acquire them. There's companies like GOG that they when a video game publisher closes, it goes to a family, and that family may die off, and then their assets go to maybe the bank. Because I know there are some games that are owned by countries. There's a company right now. It's owned by a militia company.
Okay.
It's like a King of Fighters or something like that. They're owned by a militant group. I'm not joking.
That's awful.
Yeah. So I just find that kind of interesting because it does tell you about the world. We want to market on that.
Yeah.
So what genres did you normally play when you did play?
Ooh, I like. It's interesting. It's a love-hate relationship because I like very action, maybe war games, but I know that I can't play them for too long. Not because they're annoying or anything like that, but I just get a headache playing them. So maybe if I do get back into games, if I had 2 hours or something, I would spend watching a show or, binge watching a show or a movie. I know I could probably play something and then until I get the headache, but I want to avoid headaches altogether because when I think of headaches, I think of I'm not relaxing, I'm probably overthinking, or I'm probably so stressed in doing something, and you just want to placate.
Do you plan on branching out if you ever go back, so instead of just playing a specific genre?
I think I would just have to go one game at a time because again, I mean, it's kind of like for me reading or watching a show, if I have the time, I'll watch a few episodes of something or I'll read a few pages, maybe a chapter of one book. And then I start another book and, because sometimes I'm feeling something different, but on a different day of the same week or something. And then when I come back to that one book or that one show, I have to refresh. So if I were to come back to it, I would have to be realistic with myself because I don't want to lose the progress of whatever game or I don't want to lose the momentum because if you're playing a game, you kind of have a streak going and maybe you've gone through maybe a level or a storyline or a chapter or something of a game, and it becomes maybe more difficult as you go further or enemies become more difficult or challenging or something. And if you come back to it after so much time, it's kind of like you lost some muscle memory. You've lost your streak, and
Yep.
I want to keep pushing through it. So one game at a time if I come back to it.
There's like nothing like specific. Like you saw like an ad and you're like, maybe I'll play that like in 10 years or something.
I definitely, I make a list for everything, for books, for movies. I don't think I've made a list for video games where I think, oh, okay, well, I'll come back to this and whatnot. I think because I'm so out of, I don't keep up too much or really ever. Actually, now that I think about it, I don't think I ever really keep up with video game news. I don't watch videos that pertain to video games. I don't read articles. I don't listen to podcasts. I don't watch anybody on Twitch or anything like that. Yeah, I think, oh my goodness, I already have so many vast interests that adding that on top of it, I think it would be so saturated with, all of these. I mean, not that it's not bad. It was just so many options, right? And I think that's something that in the time that we're living in right now is that what you're watching is always catered to your interests. If you're on Spotify, there's an algorithm that recommends music based on music that you listen to. If you're on Netflix, it recommends movies or shows based on what you really enjoy. That you only really discover the things that you're really interested in, as opposed to anything that feels any organic these days, right? Say early 2000s, 90s, any other decade, right? And somebody be like, yeah, I listened to this album, let me go pitch you onto this, and you listen to it and you're like, actually that's pretty fucking amazing. I gotta know who this band is. I have to listen to their other albums or something like that. Now it's so, you go on Twitch and maybe you're listening to this one person talk about blah 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 blah, and that's spending your time. You're investing your time in this and supporting this streamer, this or whatever. Maybe you might go to their Patreon and do whatever. I thought I had a sock in my pocket. I don't have a sock in my pocket. So I think that's very interesting how, we do that. And so I'm saturating I'm inundating my time with other interests that it would be incredibly overwhelming to say follow people on Instagram who are gamers or blah 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 blah. I did sleep with this one streamer, and he had like I don't remember how many followers he had on Twitch, but it was pretty impressive. He had been invited to other people's shows, although I don't remember because I didn't care enough. I only saw him a few times, and I didn't want to inflate his ego. Yeah. That's a whole other conversation. Right. Other conversation. So I feel like I learned something different from every single person that I engage my time with, because they're all in different, industries. But this one, he seemed very impressive. I actually connected him to a branded sponsorship opportunity from a previous role that I was in. And I don't think that panned out, but I definitely recommended him. Yeah, I think if I were to keep up, there would be so much going on that I think I can only do a few interests at a time.
Okay, that makes sense. And then what do you usually look for, like when you did, what did you usually look for in a game? Because like with a book or a movie, it might be the front cover, it might be actors, colors, because some people like colors. I
was thinking colors. That was the first thing that came to my mind. I like something bright. If it's all camouflage, I think that's ugly as fuck. Yeah. And I think it gets pretty bland, right? There's so many. I want something that's, I'm also a film curator, so what I look for is originality in a storyline, which I think is I think it's difficult to come by these days. Sometimes when I think of films, I think of, there's so many reboots, blah, 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 or spin-offs or requels or something that's hard to find. Something original is hard to come by. It's not that it's not out there. It's just you might have to go out of your own way, by organic means to find it, and same thing with video games too. It's like there are all these great games maybe that are locally made or games that aren't as popularized, and I don't really pay attention to reviews when it comes to a game because I want to have my own experience with it. No matter if it has its shortcomings, I can come to make that out for myself. So color is definitely one. Originality. If it's just a standard like, oh, shoot people and whatever, or you're on a mission, blah 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 blah. Great, I've experienced a lot of missions, but a great storyline is something that I really, a really strong storyline that can, you can commit to for a while, so that by the time you finish the game, or you find that there's an alternate ending or something that there's you feel fulfilled, but also emotionally like not over it yet. It feels you feel like you gave a lot of yourself to that. I like anything also. I mean, the complete opposite of the color that I'm looking for is something that's suspenseful or terrifying or supernatural, if it has those elements in there. And I think games have become more like I said, since they've become more realistic, the horror factor also they're directly proportional.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. You bring up some really good points because one person that I did talk to when I asked them that question, it's like, what do you usually look for in a game? They said that because I guess they also work for the media as well. They said people are so they have such distance towards there's like a distance with like reviews. They work for a like a magazine, like an online magazine, and but it's overseas. I know this person from overseas, and they said there's a lot of disconnect with some of the reviews that they come out with. He doesn't write them, he just knows the person that does, and he gets a lot of feedback. He's like, oh, when you did a review of this, like you focus too much on this and you focus too much on that. And he actually brought that up. He's like, when I go to play a video game, I realize that I also feel like I'm disconnected with them too, because they focus on these really weird parts. They're just like, oh, there's a glitch here. It's like, but how does the glitch ruin the game? All games have glitches, and like with movies, right? All like when you're watching a horror movie, because like you bring it up, they're proportional now. When you're playing a video game and you're playing in the dark, you can see like around you, like a Batman game, you can see all around you, but the enemies can't. And in real life, like when you're watching a movie like Halloween or something, we can see the characters, right? But they are in pitch black darkness. They are in darkness. They can't see around them, but we can see around them. So that's why there's suspense for that.
Right.
And going back to the disconnect, the video games companies will be like, well, it shouldn't be like that, but it's like, it's part of the culture. It's part of the culture with video games. Like, there's supposed to be glitches. There's supposed to be these kinds of things. You're supposed to work around them. Unless it's game breaking, then you have a problem, because then you can't play the game. And then, the other thing that he mentioned was there's also a disconnect with the back covers of games, because I don't know if you noticed this, but like Mortal Kombat, right? Because we played a lot of Mortal Kombat, like it'll be the front cover, it's just like maybe the dragon or something, or maybe there's a character on there or something. You turn the back and it's like all these characters and stuff. It's like there's a disconnect now where like those companies out there that are making the games, because these go out to people, like, what do they call it again? Like they have QA kind of things where they...
Oh, QR scanner?
No, not QR, like QAs, they send them out to people and they get people's opinions on them.
Oh, surveys?
Yeah, like surveys. They give people's opinion on that kind of stuff, and they're like, oh yeah, this is fine or something like that. He realized, right, because he works for a media company, he did an article on it, and he said, well, it seems like they're doing less of that now. So it's a lot of, like you were saying, like remakes or like sequels, or you said requels? What are those? Like remake sequels?
No, so they explain it in the newest Scream movie pretty well. It's something it's kind of like the Halloween 2018. It's it's
a sequel to a different thing, or
it's a sequel. It's when you combine a reboot and a sequel. So
okay.
So Halloween 2018, for example, they did the same thing with Leprechaun and all these other movies where
that makes sense now.
It's not a prequel at all. It's a continuation, so it's a reboot, or it's a sequel because it's a continuation, but it's also a reboot because there's this resurgence of it basically from out of nowhere. So Halloween 2018, it follows the events from after the first movie as opposed to all the other adaptations. So I think, yeah, and they have a few other. There's a really good one. At least, Wrong Turn. They've done a few. They've done a few actually requels. All terrible, but yeah, one of them involving incest. It had nothing to do with all the other ones.
Goodness gracious. Yeah, so that's why I like to bring up the angle, because you do work in the industry. It's like, yeah, I did an article on that, and I was really interested. They don't care about that anymore. Those big companies, they just said like, oh, with Call of Duty or like Battlefield, it's like, show like a generic background with a character in the front. That's it. Yeah. And then the back is just like, oh, there's a character fighting or whatever, and it's like, oh, and there's like a really cheap slogan or something. Bam, send it out. People don't care. Why? Because the game speaks for itself or something like that.
That's true. There's more accessibility to people making their own video games than ever before as well, and them establishing their own deals with and it could be easily downloadable, maybe mobile, maybe for iPhone, maybe for a PS5 if they're able to work out a deal. They don't even entirely have to work out maybe a distribution plan where they have to sell discs anymore. It could all just be digital. Yep. So it's changed in so many ways that I haven't quite seen for myself too much, but you do get to hear it and see how kids now, they have like their own PS5s, like it's nothing. When you're a kid growing up in the 90s or the 2000s, right? It's like you have to kind of earn that in a way, and you have to save up money for your own video game, and unless somebody gets it for you as a gift or something, there's that kind of pride, right? But now it's so accessible for anybody, little kids, and parental controls are a whole other thing too when it comes to moderating that. But things are really changing for almost the scary, because there's so much in everybody's hand that I don't know. I don't think I'm any authority to speak on this, but
no,
it's really
that's
scary.
Fine. Yeah. And it's hilarious they also bring that up too. You want originality. But the two people I've interviewed and then the two that I have to interview, because my next question is, what is your favorite game? Both of the people I've talked to prior, and then the two people I'm going to be talking to, all of their favorite games are indie games. And the reason is because one of the things they say, it's originality, or it's, I can't get that from like a big game, because some people like say like The Sims, but it's like, oh yeah, I like The Sims, but like I get that and more from this other thing. It's like, oh, okay. And some of them I didn't even know about. Some I did, of course, but some I didn't even know about. I'm like, oh, okay. That's very interesting, because it's funny because we're all in the same age group, and we're all like pretty much wanting the same thing. It's like, oh, we just want something that's either bright, but at the same time it's not bright, it's interesting, or not something that you can see out of the. So what's your favorite game? I guess either it could be right now, like it, because I guess you don't play now, so what would it be? Well,
I definitely love the Mortal Kombat franchise. I feel like I knew everything there was to know about Mortal Kombat and all the characters and the worlds and whatnot. Up until about 10 years ago, I haven't kept up. But I guess one of the games I would play if I were given the chance is MK11, because that came out I think 1 or 2 years ago. Let me see. There was this game in I think 2013. It was an indie game. It was an online game as well. It was like fantasy based, and there were a lot of it's funny, I was watching a show and they were making fun of this very thing, but it's like one of those fantasy games, but they have you like do chores, like you have to pick up mushrooms from
was
something.
Was it Final Fantasy?
No, I don't remember the name of it. It was like an online game, but and they were like magical mushrooms. But I can see why you think it's like Final Fantasy or something, because it had like this sorcery element to it. I don't know if there was. I don't remember if there was action, but I found it really fun. I would spend hours playing that, and there were different lands too, and it felt like there was always something new. And they updated there was like an package. I think generally anybody can just play in whatever free, but you can purchase not pebbles, but some kind of currency, right? And I think by then you can access more things, but I was okay with just free, especially because I didn't have money. So, but you still had just as much, room to do whatever. They would update the worlds. They would, based on the seasons, they would update all these other things too. And I found it so, and there was a community too, which I think is also something that's so great with video games, is that, you can play with folks who are playing from different parts of the world and different time zones. And that's also really fun. I think that's something that definitely sticks around today, is having that community with folks. So if I remember the name of that, I'll probably let you know, because I'm not going out of my way just to feel like, oh, did I just imagine this game? Or, I'm not going to go on Reddit and ask that question. But,
and then, so you've already mentioned why it's your favorite, because that was my next question. You already did 2 questions in one. And then, would there be anything you want more from games? Since you don't really play them.
Right.
Is there something that you're just like, I can't make time for it because either, I'm busy, but would there be something that, since it means like what we were talking about, what it means to you, like the whole world aspect, is there anything more that you want from it? You want more representation? Do you want more?
I was actually just dreaming about this.
Yeah. Sometime
this week. It's Thursday now. I think maybe it was like Sunday or Monday, but I was thinking, I was complaining to somebody, because that's all I do. I was complaining to somebody. I'm like, fuck this, or blah, blah, blah. Video games and movies, they should have, no, I think in the dream, I was actually specifically talking about video games. I'm like, I think somebody was telling me about something. I thought, women in video games are still, their body.
Yes.
It's not just women, but I remember the dream. Okay. I was talking about, because I'm a former model. I was a model while I was in college, and I was talking about how there's this double standard between representation of women's bodies in general and all forms of media, and men's bodies. So, for example, in video games, exactly. They have these unrealistic standards for how a man's body should look. That I like bodies that are very realistic. I think I gravitate towards people. And, whether it's somebody I'm dating or sleeping with or blah, 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 it's, I could have this fantasy of, I can hang out with somebody that has this really, interesting, chiseled, features or whatever, right? I think there's just something more homey with the realistic. So women's bodies and male bodies alike. Women, I think they're they're gratuitously sexy and very curvaceous, and men, they're very fit. I think, I know a great deal of men who are very fit, but they still have like dad bods, and that's also just as cool. You know what I mean? So that's something. And there are lots of women that one of my colleagues, she works for somewhere in LAPD, and she's got an average body. I mean, she's fit. I mean, if you were to unpack it, she's pretty fit. But it doesn't show. You know what I mean? So, and that, there's something to be said about the people that are making these games, right? They at least for the female characters, they want basically they want a man packaged in a woman's body. And that's what I know that in terms of dating standards, that's what a lot of guys want in straight relationships. The guys want, and women, they want the cool girl type. They want somebody that's just like them, drinks beer, watches sports, is super chill and non-confrontational, but packaged, in a very sexy, neat body. And the same thing for horror films as well, right? It's what makes it film or horror films so palatable is the final girl, because in the final girl, she's the one that outsmarts everybody else that's died, right? I mean, she's the virgin, she's kind of meek and unassuming and whatnot, but she's the one that outlives everybody, which is it's so interesting. And then you get to see her, if you see her again, she kind of strips the murderer of their power. The murderer, usually a man, and she almost, from the academic scholar is Clover. I'm forgetting her first name, but Dr. Clover. She described it is a reversal of roles. We're seeing it almost voyeuristically, this murderer watching men, women, particularly women, kind of ogling them a little bit more than he should. And you don't get to see the murderer quite yet, but you know, when you see this revealed, by then the reveal of the murderer or the serial killer, whoever, that's when they've already killed some people. And now the next few people, including the final girl, stick around. And then the final girl, somebody that, again, very, you would not suspect would survive, she is able to retrieve the murderer's weapon, which is their power, essentially, right?
Yes.
Whether it's a knife or a chainsaw or something, and kill them, right? So she's kind of castrating him in a metaphysical kind of sense, or in a metaphorical kind of sense. And she's the cool girl now, because she has these like male elements to her, that she was able to kill him, outsmart him, and take his phallus in a sense. So that's a very feminist reading to these things. But I would want to, you know, see characters that are pretty realistic. You know, if it's a horror game or something supernatural, I'm like, okay, great. Everybody's entitled to die. The gays, the Jews, everybody.
Yeah.
You know, and everybody's all white or whatever. They have like the token one or two black guys. It's probably two black guys now. And, you know, one thing I found really funny in the Mortal Kombat games, they introduced, you know, Cassie Cage and Jackie Briggs, and they're just generic. There's nothing interesting about them. They are exactly, they're just a hybrid, right? They have, you know,
they're a mix of their parents.
Yeah. What's not so cool about Jackie is that, you know, she doesn't have like an arm, right? That was, you know, or any arms that were.
Are you talking about Jax? Oh, Jackie
Briggs.
Yeah. She didn't have any arms.
She didn't have her arms removed, but she had the strength and maybe something a little extra, but there was nothing particularly unique about her. So if you're going to continue for a game franchise that's already existing, right? They've introduced new characters, right, with different powers and forms and anatomies. Really cool. But what are you doing different with everybody else? Sure, you give them different costumes, right? But if we're talking about representation of the people creating these characters, designing these characters, creating the storylines for these characters, there has to be more diversity within the all of the departments, not just graphics, but motion graphics and dialogue and all these other things too.
Right.
That has to happen. That's something I would definitely want to see in video games moving forward, so that when I come back to it in another 10 years, you know, it'll be 20 years of having, it'll be like my own Halloween H2O. I'll come back to it 20 years. Things will be so different. I'll be like, I didn't know that you could do, you know, VR will have already advanced by then too. I can't even imagine, but it's already still so new and innovative. It's very much in its infancy now in video games, but I can't even imagine where we can go from there. You know, like holographic games. I don't know where we're going to go from there.
There's already AR and all that kind of stuff.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I like how you said that too about different, you know, like more realistic body types, because Mortal Kombat 11, the director actually said, well, like, why do they look like this? And he's like, well, I mean, they look kind of weird before. Like, there's these characters that were wearing like these like bikini things, and they had bodies like that. It's like, how do they have bodies like that? Right. It's like, I guess at the time it was just, well, I don't want to word it wrong, but I think he said at the time it was just easier to do that. And then it allowed people to just purchase the game. It's like, okay. But now that it's established, people just buy it because of the characters.
Yes. Yes.
And then another thing happened with I forgot what I just thought about it right now too. Resident Evil. That Chris Redfield, he was like this really like super buff guy. He punched a boulder, and then the next time, well, actually, on the 6th one, he was still kind of buff, but then the 7th one, they kind of slimmed him down. And then 8, he's kind of like this bulky guy, but he has like kind of a dad bod. And people are just like, why does he look like this burly man kind of thing? And then, realistic. And then people are just like, I actually liked it, because before, like, he looked like the first introduction to him, he looked kind of realistic. The very first Resident Evil, they all have realistic body portions. And then as the series got on, it became more, you know, like how the industry is. I guess Leon never really had a like super hefty body type, but Chris was just a standard guy who just had some military training, and then now he's a guy with a dad bod.
Yeah.
But that's not a bad thing. He still looks buff. He still looks like he can beat someone up, but he kind of has a little weight to him. He's a little bit older. He can't move as well now because he's beyond those years. I actually kind of like that. And I like what they said too about it too. They just said, well, he's just older. He's probably, they can't really do anything about that. And that's kind of like I like that, but the one thing that, as you said, there's a double standard. The one thing I don't like is that in fighting video games, I don't know if you know this, but they either stop the ages of the girls, either they put them in cryo sleep, or I don't know, they're like vampires, so they don't age. But if they're over a certain age, they're not in the fighting game anymore. And this happens with a lot of big fighting games, like when they're past 40 years old, like Lee May and stuff like that, and the newer Mortal Kombat. Like, why is she a fighter? It's like, oh, she's too old. And it's like, but you can have like Johnny Cage, who's like in his 50s, fight, and then Jackson in his 50s fight. I mean, Sonya still fights. But like these other characters, they're too old, or maybe they look too old. I'm like, well, what are you trying to say here? Yeah. I would still want to play as like some of those characters, just see how they play as, even if they're kind of old. I'm pretty sure they have some finesse to them that can get by.
That's also just a very ageist thing, right?
Yes.
I watched Everything Everywhere All at Once, and we get to see Michelle Yeoh, who's I think in her late 50s. If I'm being very generous, she's probably in her 60s. And she was able to, she did a lot of, and she's always, in her career, she's done a lot of her own stunts, especially in this movie. And, I think that's really underestimating the, and maybe the people that create these games too, they have these biases against people who are older, right? What would they be like, the own game creators, if they were that age? You know what I mean?
Right.
I know that I see in movies, right, you could see an actor or blah 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 blah, and they if they have to work out for, say, a Marvel movie or something like that, right, they have this very very strict draconian kind of regimen to them, and by the time they're in the movie, and they look ripped, right, but they also look realistically ripped, like how a person would actually look, right? Yeah. If we can translate that to video games, how those bodies look at their most ripe or whatever, then that would be great. Characters who are older, and I think that's when we talk about diversity, it's not just race or ethnicity or class or anything like that. It's also age is also included. Age and body type are included in that too.
Yeah, I just found that very interesting. I don't know who said that about Lee May. I think maybe another thing was like her character wasn't very interesting. That it had nothing to do with her. But
Asian to reason.
But how many? I guess the question I can ask you is like, how many old fighting game characters can you look at? Like, can you remember versus how many old female fighting game characters?
Right, it would be on one hand.
I even read an article. I've read a few. It's like, fighting game characters over the age of 50. I'm like, okay. I'm just very curious how many female fighting game characters over the age of 50. The same company that came, because like, let's say Watch Mojo comes out with the video, right? It's like top 10 male like anime characters in their 50s or something, kick butt or something, and then there's no female equivalent to that because you expect them to, because it's Watch Mojo or something. I'm not saying Watch Mojo does, but they have a list for like pretty much anything. And then with those companies, it's like, okay, if they did a list like this, they have to do the female equivalent, and there's no female equivalent. I'm like, so what? I mean, it also tells you the demographic of the people playing video games. They're in their 30s now. Like the people that primarily play are between the ages of 20 something and like 40 or something.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and
millennials. I
guess they don't want to see older female fighters, even though I'm like, I'd want to see, certain characters fight that are older now. Like we see, as I said, we see Sonya Blade, but I guess she's the only exception. And then there are other characters that are in their 50s, but they don't appear 50. They don't age that way.
Right.
And I guess because of their race or something, they're aliens or something. So that they're still fairly young. And they still can have these kinds of bodies. And I go, all right. I'm not saying.
I mean, that's so because they're the ones that make up the rules, right?
Yeah.
They're the ones that get to decide. Oh, this person is. Oh, we can make Sonia. If they're making a new one, like, oh, we can make her in her 20s again. You know what I mean? Or I guess we're gonna make her. You know what I mean? Same thing for Creed or whatever. They're the ones that get to make up the rules, and that hasn't stopped game franchises or movies from changing the rules out of nowhere.
Yep.
For example, Halloween 4, like what the fuck, right? Or and then Halloween 6, like what the fuck there, And then Halloween 2020, it's like it went based off of the first Halloween 2 movies, and then everything else was scrapped. That hasn't stopped any franchise from changing the rules at any point. So
yep,
they can definitely any games now. I guess in the future they can consider that. Maybe not even have to think about it from like, oh, well, the seller, perspective, not from a marketing perspective, but from, okay, well, will this be just enjoyable, or will there be a user engagement here?
Yeah, so that's I mean, to make like a little note for myself, I primarily play like older. I'm into games that are not like now. I kind of force myself to with like the videos I come out with. I just do like a random thing. So I pick I randomize the letter and the number, and I just play a game. It's normally a modern game, but I play like games like from years ago, and that you don't really have to think about it because they're pixelated, and they have different types of characters. Like I know in what was I gonna say? Like for like Chrono Cross and all of that, or games that you've never really heard of, but they have really interesting. They do some really interesting things with some of the characters, like even female characters. Like the very first Final Fantasy game that had a female main character, people for like a while didn't consider her the main character. They considered the male guy the main character, and I didn't come to realize this until I guess I read an article. Because they're coming out with a Final Fantasy fighting game, and they were like, oh, the main characters of every Final Fantasy game, and there was a female on there. I was like, wait, what? So I'm like, I have to look this up, and it's the game I'm actually playing right now. The Final Fantasy game I'm on right now. She's the main character, and I was like, yeah, and then she actually goes through a really interesting arc. And I'm gonna play video games with you.
No, it's usually the opposite.
Have you ever got anyone into video games? It's usually just like kind of like fast kind of things.
No, not lately. No.
So you have, but not lately.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, do you think video games are widely popular now?
Yeah.
So you see them everywhere in like your everyday life?
No, but I know that based on
like people you work with or something.
Yeah, that I mean, it's a pastime. It's something. Again, I find it's so ironic how something so violent you can find. I think in some way we're very desensitized by a lot of the things on our media because we're shooting people for fun, right? Or no, it's basically we're shooting people for fun, or we're shooting if it's a horror game, or there's sex sells, but so does violence. And if you see the movie Nope, that's exactly kind of the point of it. Is we're desensitized by a lot of media consumption, and we sensationalize a whole lot of trauma. There's something, we hear another school shooting and we think, oh, well, blah blah blah, and then that's where the term thoughts and prayers comes in, right? It's kind of a stand-in for actual action, right? Inaction, kind of like playing video games, just kind of mindlessness. If we think critically about it, that's also kind of damaging because it's almost complicity. Because we think, oh, we can actually address gun control, and I'm just going to go play with a fictional gun. I don't know if the answer is. I forgot what the question was.
It's widely popular now.
Definitely widely popular because of the accessibility factor, right? Because of if you're not buying a game in person, you have it digitally. Kids are playing it. Again, we have this. As millennials, we've grown up with it, right? We're among the first generation that's had video games, so we kind of stick to that, and we want to. There's something about bonding, the bonding factor, right? You want to teach your kids to play video games, or you want them to watch you play video games. And then I think that's also a vicious cycle too, because then you're teaching them to just enjoy it kind of mindlessly, not see how it can kind of connect to the larger scheme of the world that you're currently living in.
Yeah, it's a window to even every generation.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, because like Final Fantasy VII, as I think I told you this in person, like it was pre 9/11, and the main characters, like, they were labeled as terrorists. And then in today's time, it's a little different. Final Fantasy VII Remake, they kind of make them seem like the good guys from the get-go, and for reasons post 9/11.
Yeah, you were telling me that.
Yeah, because like the way that it was structured too is like, oh, you're just this guy that's blowing up this place, and or doing it for like our rights or something. It's like, that's terrorist.
Yeah.
And then today's time, it's like they give you before you even do that. Oh, this is a major company like stealing all our stuff. So I mean, it's still a terrorist act, but it's like of good. They're doing it for better intentions. It's back then it was vague. It's for our intentions, but then you kind of realize it's for good intentions, and then now it's like we have to tell them, we have to give context to this.
Right. I think it's something that we've seen a lot more in video games now is context, right? Yeah. But everything, regardless, anything media based is, they all have an angle, and they're all biased, right? We're following. I think video games now, I think we see a lot more unreliable narrators, and we see a lot of anti-heroes. But again, I don't think a lot of people are really framing it that way. Media is all about framing and how you're framing and what's in the frame, and if what's in your frame is all that you really see, that's how you'll see the world. If all you have is a hammer, everything to you is a nail, and that's kind of how video games are.
Yeah, but I mean, that's why I ask, several people, like, what do they mean to you? And then to you, it's just like, it's a picture into the world. Someone else, it could be like, well, it's just an entertainment. And then to some people, it's just, well, it's a way for me to relax because I had a hard day at work. People look at it for different reasons, but I mean, the way you see it is like, well, it should be like, we should view it like this. That's pretty much it. Well, thank you for coming on. Is there anything you wanted to say before you get off?
Yeah, well, like video games, I think to your first question, it's an art. It's a part of culture. Enter in tain. So if you extend the last part, right, tain would be to sustain, right? So it's sustaining your attention in the world that you have entered. And so, and the world that you have entered is constructed by people who have made it, right? And that is the business as it is. And it's an art. It's something that's beautiful. I mean, otherwise it wouldn't be something that so many people are enjoying. So I will take any suggestions that anybody has. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot longer than I was expecting it to be. I said that about the last one too, because I was like, oh, it'll probably be like 20 minutes or so, because the first one was about that long. It's actually, I think, a little under 20 minutes. But I mean, like, these last ones, I allow you guys to talk. I'm like, yeah, just say what's on your mind.
Yeah,
don't feel worried about the time frame or something like that. It's all for good fun. So people understand your perspective and all that kind of. Okay, well, thank you. Yes. All right, guys. Until the next. I forgot to even say what this was. It's called Video Game Love, and it's people love. It's like kind of in the quotes because people either love it or don't. Yeah. So until next time. All right.
Thank you. Thank you.